It's time for the Kim Hammer Show, where you'll learn how your state government affects you, your family, and community. Here's Kim Hammer.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on an absolutely beautiful Saturday. Something about my show at noon is usually beautiful. So you want better weather, listen in. I'll deliver it every time. All right. First of all, we're going to have a very busy show today. In fact, we're not even going to take a break at the bottom of the hour for the news. If you want to listen to the news, wait till 1 o'clock because we have in studio today Marietta McClure, who is running for my old house seat, actually, District 28, down in Saline County. In the background, we've got Shawn Johnson, which he's going to get his time on the second half of the show because Barbara Webb is going to be joining us for the second half of the show. So we're not even going to take a break at the bottom of the hour. So grab your chairs and hang on because we're going to get through this today. I wanted to start off by thanking those that helped make this show possible. We have Baxley, Penfield, Mouty, realtors down in Saline County there at Spring Hill and Highway 5. As I always tell you, if you're looking for residential, commercial, or rental property, they're an excellent source to go to in Saline County. And Saline County is one of the fastest growing counties in the state. And so if you want to have somebody represent you with regards to real estate needs, they would be a great one to check out. And then also want to give a shout out to Everett GMC Buick there at I-30 and Alcoa Road. They are a great dealership to deal with. In fact, I took my car in last week. Got it back when they said they'd get it back. And guess what? I got it back fixed, and I haven't had any problems. And their certified mechanics were as reasonable price-wise as a shade tree mechanic. So it just helped to go there and get good quality service, or if you're looking for a new vehicle place to go. Edwards Food Store here in Central Arkansas. They're Edward Food Stores or Cash Savers, Edward Cash Savers. They're all throughout all Central Arkansas. They've got one up there in Cantrell. They've got one over at Levy. They got Jacksonville. They got BB. They've got down in Otter Creek. They're just all over the place, and they are great stores, clean and very, very effective and very competitive on their prices. In fact, I was in 2 or 3 of them this morning doing some visits, and just clean, friendly stores, so a good place to go. And then also Duck's Garage. Duck is helping out this month. Duck's Garage, and you hear Duck on the radio station here every week with their show, and so I want to give a shout out to all those folks. If you're watching Facebook Live, you see the brochure or the flyer right here. The church that I pastor is going to have a sportsman banquet on March 14th. The doors will open at 5, and the program will start at 6, and we have Pat Fitz, who is the director of Game and Fish, is going to be down along with some of his personnel. This is a family-friendly environment. Kids are welcome, wives are welcome, husbands are welcome, even your in-laws are welcome. So it's a free event, and the menu is going to be bear, raccoon, beaver, and traditional pork butts in case you got a weak stomach. So we got you covered every way, and you can just look at that, and we'll get it up on our Facebook page. All right, let's get started with Marietta McClure, who is running on the Republican primary ticket for District 28 in Saline County. Marietta, thank you for joining us today on the Kim Hammer Show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Very good. Here we go. Let's get started. So why don't you tell the folks a little bit about yourself with regards to your personal life and your family or anything you feel comfortable just to get them acquainted with you.
Sure. I live in Saline County and have been there for almost 13 years. My husband and I have been married for 12, and we have 4 kids. And I have a small business there right behind on Military. And I owned that business for about 6 years. And
You go ahead and give a shout out for your business.
All right. It's McClure Fitness, and we are the largest group fitness gym in Arkansas. And we also have online workouts. So if someone wants to work out with us online, they can jump in and
Okay. Well, that kind of segues into the next thing. Tell about your personal or business experience that makes you believe you're qualified to hold the House of Representatives seat, District 28, that you're running for.
Absolutely. I have a very wide array of experience. I started out after college. I got my degree was in political science. I've always been very interested in that and wanting to make a difference in our government and country. But right after college, I went to work for the Bureau of Legislative Research, which, Senator, as you know, is the state agency that runs the committees and the legislature. And so I worked for the House and Senate State Agencies Committee as the committee analyst. I sat up there next to this the chairman, and that was amazing experience. I was talking to one of my former coworkers, and they said that there has never been a a bureau employee that has ever run for office ever before.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so just the experience that I have learning how all of the committees work, and I'm going to be able to jump in first thing and know a lot. And then I worked in constituency services for a while, and I also then saw a need in my community for a workout facility. There was nothing what I had envisioned that was available in Saline County. And so almost 10 years ago, I started just doing that, and then have grown, officially got a brick and mortar almost 7 years ago, and have grown that business to now the largest one in the state. We have it's a 12,000 square foot facility. I have 45 employees. And I also started an online business that I mentioned earlier. So that's another arm of my business. And then I have a boutique in there. And so I was last week at the state chamber talking to some of those different guys, and they said that, out of the 135 state reps, that less than 20 are even business owners anymore, and that they're really struggling to, get some of that legislation passed when they're having to train people on why some of that business legislation is so important.
Well, and I'll say this, I admire those that are legislators that have businesses, because I see some of them and the stress and strain that are on them. And I understand why the number is diminished because of the demands that are put on you when you're trying to keep your livelihood going on the, back home while you're dealing with everything. And just a side note, I'm not a member of her club. You can look at me and tell that. So sorry about that. I'll get better. Okay. So why are you running on the Republican ticket?
Sure. So my family has always been Republican. I have always been Republican. When you look at the party platforms of both parties, it's obvious which party is going to help our local districts, state, and country, and which one's going to hurt them. I want to win this race and certainly represent all of the citizens of my district, regardless of who they vote for, but in good conscience. I just have to openly and consistently express and stand by and vote for the conservative principles of the Republican Party.
Okay. So how long have you been a Republican then?
I have always been a Republican. If you were to pull my voting record down at the clerk's office, it's R all the way down. And my family, like I said, I've always been Republican. I always remember stories of my grandmother and grandfather in, I believe it was the 1964 presidential race, going door to door in Texas for Barry Goldwater. And they were, against Lyndon Johnson. So we have a long history of supporting the Republican Party.
Okay. And how would you define conservatism? I can't even say the word conservatism. And the reason I say that, as everybody that's been listening the last several weeks, as I've had candidates on the show, is because there's a different definition for conservatism based on who you talk to. So what is your definition of it?
Absolutely. So to me, it means ensuring government runs efficiently with as little interference in our daily lives as possible. It means reducing wasteful spending while prioritizing what we need to pay for. In my mind, that would include things that help create a strong economy, so people are allowed to flourish and prosper on their own. Education that allows students to learn skills, but they need to be productive citizens. And then infrastructure with roads, water, and utility systems to create and transport goods. And providing a safety net for our most needy while putting plans in place to keep people from taking advantage of those programs. Conservatism also means protecting traditional family values, being pro-life and pro-Second Amendment. And then I watched your show, the last couple ones, and I also wanted to mention that there's so many other ways that this is important these days. And it also, to me, it means supporting other conservatives, like our president, like other senators, our governor, state senators, and state representatives, especially because I feel like if we are part of the Republican Party, we all have mostly the same common core beliefs, and to support each other instead of, fighting against each other. I watched my opponent's interview last week, and I thought he did a great job at defining all of those things too.
Okay, very good. So what's your position on taxes? You alluded to a minute ago, but drill down on that. What your position is?
Sure. I really, as a business owner, also, I have to say that low taxes are incredibly important to me. I feel like that if we can keep taxes low, people are going to take that money that they maybe were not giving to the government and then go and spend it in our communities. As Saline County being one of the fastest growing counties in the state. That's actually how my husband and I chose to live in Saline County, is that he's originally from Malvern, and we both graduated from Fayetteville, and we both got jobs in Little Rock, and he wanted me to move to Malvern. learn? And I said, well, let's see. There's this town here that has a Target and a Starbucks. So let's start there. And that's 13 years later, here we are.
And the wife always wins, Shawn. Wife always wins.
That's right.
Well, in the smart households, they do. But anyway, so what's your position on social issues as it relates to the establishment of the laws? And let me kind of define that a little bit. If you've listened to the show, you know, but just for those that are maybe tuning in for the first time to the Kim Hammer Show, what that means is we are confronted with, as elected officials, having to deal with issues that are society-based, not necessarily economics or dealing with other areas, but society issues such as dealing with hate crimes or dealing with red flag laws or dealing with what is the equivalent pound of flesh for a crime that is committed in sentencing in the judicial system, with abortion and, with same-sex marriage as far as bathroom rights and all those kind of things, sanctuary cities. So what is your position on how you would go about addressing decisions that you would have to make involving social issues as it comes to the establishments of laws?
Sure. These are very emotionally complicated issues. And I keep going back to that phrase because it, we want to make sure that we are doing the right thing and not having, again, too much government control, but where do you draw the line on things like that? And so, I go back to my core beliefs, and some of those things, Senator, also just go back to my core biblical beliefs. And anytime that I am faced with an issue, I will always revert back to what does the Bible say about this? And so that's something that I really believe firmly in. Yeah.
One of the greatest amounts of the state budget is allocated to public schools. Please share your thoughts or give us some thoughts on schools in general, and state your position or any position you may have with regards to the future directions of schools and what schools are going to look like in the future. And if you want to expand on how you think we ought to go about educating our kids, what does that look like?
Yeah. So I have, as I mentioned earlier, I have 4 children. 3 of them are in public schools in Benton, and we love our public school. I went to public school and went to public college, and they're great. I think that, and as kids are going through public school, the road may not be the same for each of them. And so that kind of takes me down 2 different paths. One would be are we training them for workforce type things in high school? Maybe college isn't the answer for every student. And so to give them opportunities where they are learning different things so that when they graduate, if they are not going to go to college, they are ready immediately to go into the workforce and be a productive citizen. So that's something that I'm very passionate about. But then the other side of that is that, maybe kids need to do a private school, or, public school isn't the answer, or if they're going to homeschool or whatever it is, but that parents have the choices to send their children where they want for school.
Okay. A second great amount of the budget is spent on Medicaid budget or the Medicaid services, and that can equate to Arkansas Works or to traditional Medicaid, medically frail Medicaid patients. So what are your views regarding expanding Medicaid services and going about meeting the healthcare needs of the population that needs assistance?
Yes. So the courts have struck down the work requirement, and that's not good because it could make the program unsustainable. I think we need to explore all options, including block grants, but our main focus should always be to ensure coverage for the citizens with the highest medical needs, the elderly, those with behavioral health needs, and our kids. Before we continue to provide coverage we cannot afford for able-bodied adults.
Okay. And are there any particular areas that you have interest in working on legislatively if elected?
Yes. Some of the things, like I mentioned earlier, definitely education. And as I've got, 4 kids that will affect them. I also am going to be very I'm very interested in working on things that help bring more businesses to my area and my district, and how can we help business owners um, not just survive, but to make Saline County a wonderful place to start and draws business in. So, and that kind of just goes to my background and what I've experienced in the last 10 years of
10
running
years.
a business, for sure.
So with regards to the growth of government, how do you see the balance between meeting the needs of the public, which I would throw in the word essential services, because unfortunately there's a segment of our population that wants something for nothing and want us to just give it to them. But with regards to the growth of government, how do you see the balance between meeting the needs of the public and controlling the growth of government at the same time?
Yeah. So it's a delicate balance that I plan to spend a lot of time thinking about, evaluating, getting counsel, and looking at other states' models. We don't want the federal or state government to be overly intrusive into people's lives and rights. I want capitalism and free enterprise to work its magic and run all the various aspects of our economy and society. So should a state government have a maximum effectiveness? What can it do? Obviously, I'm going to always lean towards less government, less taxes, less control. As far as the growth of government specifically, and this is some of my background also, as our state grows, as Saline County grows, I don't think that we need more government. I think that those services, like the state agencies that are already in place, how can we make them leaner and more effective as the population grows, and which ones are doing a great job, and how can we spend our time and energy bettering those services and growing those particular services that are already in place.
And when looking at the direction that some of the other states are going, like Virginia, and I've said this for every candidate I've asked this question of, which incidentally, if you're listening for the first time, I did provide the candidates the list of questions, and so they have been generated by myself as far as what has been given to them. But I always say, whenever it comes to looking at the directions that some other states are going, like Virginia, which God bless them, they're special out there. Fortunately, there's a rising up that's occurring that people have realized that the Liberal Democrat Party is trying to overreach when it comes to the Second Amendment. What are your views regarding the Second Amendment?
Sure. So I cannot believe what has happened in Virginia. It's one of the earliest and most conservative states in the country. But Governor Northup and his Democratic majority in the legislature seem to be tearing down every good thing Virginia has ever stood for. Not only are they tearing down war heroes and actually supporting the killing of live babies that have already been born, but as you alluded to, passing legislation to take people's guns away from them is just, it's unacceptable.
And there are opinions being expressed regarding the seizures of weapons under red flag laws, or what's referred to as red flag laws. Please share your views regarding such laws that have those intent.
Yeah, I think those laws are dangerous and completely open to misinterpretation and abuse. For citizens to be able to report other citizens because they're uncomfortable seeing someone carry a weapon, or they don't like someone's personality or demeanor, claim they're dangerous or mentally unstable, it's going to create a mess. And I think states that pass these kinds of laws will actually have more revolt, more violence, and more division than ever. So I think Arkansas just needs to say no thank you to those types of laws.
Very good. What are your views about how to address the needs of the infrastructure in our state?
Infrastructure is so important, and I am completely supportive of the issue 1 that's going to be on the ballot in November. And I think that our listeners need to make sure that they are very educated about this. It's not a new tax; it's a continuance of a half-cent sales tax, and it's just I spoke yesterday with Judge Airy, who's our county judge there in Saline County, and he said that if that does not get approved, there will be he will be missing $1.5 million from his annual budget that he has. He has 1,100 roads to pave and keep track of, and that's 700 miles. If you think about it, it's from Saline County all the way down to Pensacola Beach. That's how many roads he has to keep up. And so if that money goes away, I mean, we're going to be struggling we're going to be complaining about where we're going and how does these roads get repaired and the overlay. So if that does not pass, we are going to have to figure out that money is going to have to come from somewhere. So.
And that's 1.5 million out of the county budget alone.
Out of the county budget alone.
It's 43 million to the counties, 43 millions to the cities and municipalities that are making up that, and then the balance of 119 million are going to the state.
That's right.
What do you see are the top issues that are confronting us as a state?
My business go-to is just going to be that we need to continue to keep attracting strong businesses from out of the state and the country to Arkansas. Incentives to help them move here and build plants, hire our people, pay taxes, grow our economy. I'd like to be able to help keep in that same sense, help move as many people off welfare and food stamps and getting them into programs where they're actually or getting them off those programs and into paying jobs, and that they can be and feel more productive, full of dignity and carrying their own load. And then we've just got to keep improving the quality of our education in numerous educational categories. And there's no reason Arkansas cannot take dramatic leaps.
Okay. And then finally, feel free to share any comments that you like with the public to know about your personal or political views. Open mic for a minute.
Okay, sure. I feel fortunate to have, I've been in Arkansas my entire life. I have lived in Conway, Fayetteville, and now Benton for the last 13 years. And I really love our state, and I especially love the community I'm part of. I have had the privilege to get to know hundreds and hundreds of great folks through my business, my local church, First Baptist, and our kids' schools and sports teams. I really have a heart for the people of Benton and Bauxite and Haskell, and I want to help and represent them well. So every one of them, regardless of who they or what they believe, that's why I'm running, to be of service and to aid those citizens in my district. So.
Very good. And District 28, as Marietta, she just alluded to, and I'll define it, it's south of I-30, picks up the majority of Benton, and it goes out to Bauxite, picks up the majority of Bauxite out to Mountain View Road, or out to Mount Olive Road, and then it kind of sweeps back over through Haskell, actually goes down to Tull.
Yes.
And captures all that area down there. So geographically, it's a pretty good size area.
It is. And so, yeah. But I also couldn't get off the show without asking you for your vote, because you're also in my district. And to tell you that as I was watching some of these, I just think that this is amazing, because people used to have town halls and they get to know the candidates. And this is just a perfect way for people to do that. So I can't wait to watch more of these, especially as November comes closer. Appreciate
that very much. And hopefully word will spread, and this will be an ongoing thing. It has worked out to be pretty good. So we'll do this next year as in the fall as the election gets closer. But there's only a Republican primary in Saline County.
Absolutely.
So, all right. So I'm going to let Barbara Webb transition in. We've had Marietta McClure, who's a candidate for District 28 of Saline County, and the polls are actually open today till 4 o'clock. It is a beautiful day to get out and vote. The weather forecast isn't looking so good for Monday, Tuesday, so get out and vote. And I always try to guilt people, because if you don't get out to vote, that just means somebody died somewhere to give you the right to do it, and you've disrespected them. And you ought to be ashamed of yourself if you don't get out to vote, okay? And then the polls are open Monday, 8 to 6, and then Tuesday is the big day for Arkansas and for the nation. Marietta McClure, thank you for being in. All right, Barbara Webb is coming in, and we're not taking a break at the bottom of the hour, as I said earlier, because we want to maximize our time. We've got 2 judges. They are not running against each other, okay? We've got 2 judges that are in, and while they're getting settled in and we get started with their questions, let me just again thank those who make it possible for this show to be on the air. That would be Baxley Penfield Mouty out of Saline County. You're looking for real estate, either commercial, rental, or residential in Saline County, or actually any part of Central Arkansas. Give those folks down there a call. They'll be glad to help you. Everett GMC Buick there at I-30 and Alcoa Road. As always mentioned, they give great quality service. You can get a great deal on automobile. You can look at them online, and you can shop in any way that you're choosing to spend your money to find a good vehicle that's a GMC product. And then Edwards Food Store in Central Arkansas, also over in the east. They have a store in Marietta, Forest City, and all the way up there to Harrisburg. So they're spread throughout Central Arkansas, run by great people and great service. And then Duck's Garage down in Benton. If you need your automobile worked on, you've got a diesel especially, or you got a fleet, or you just need to go by and get your oil changed, go down there and see Duck's Garage on Airlane Drive in Benton. He will take care of you. It's a family-owned business, and they take care of their customers. Next week, we're going to have Dr. Terry Parrish, who is the president of the American Baptist Association, on, and we are going to have a debate about separation of church and state. I think it'll be a good show for you to tune in, because this is an issue that we get in from time to time. When you think about things like the Ten Commandments, in God We Trust posters, about Bible classes being taught in school, and yet you see the liberal agenda advancing its way into the public schools. So we've got a real healthy platform to debate the separation of church and state. And then want to remind you also, church I pastor, Saline Baptist Church down in Tull, having a wildlife supper on March 14th. I want to give a shout out, though, also, because I got some really good friends, First Methodist in Benton the same night. Unfortunately, we've scheduled the same night. But they are going to have a wildlife supper also. I've got a lot of good friends over at First Methodist there in Benton. So if you're looking for a great night of family activity, just support the one that's closest to you, because there's plenty of wild meat to go around. All right, here we go. We have in office today Shawn Johnson, who is running for circuit judge for the 14th Division. Geographically, Shawn, give us that territory.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Senator Hammer, for having me on today, and I'm so glad to be with you. That district, that area that elects this particular division is all of Pulaski and Perry County, except for the area of downtown Little Rock, southeast Little Rock, and all areas east of Highway 67, 167. Okay. And that's how they're elected, but they serve the whole area, all the counties. It's a little confusing. It pertains to the Hunt Decree from the early 1990s, why it's divided that way.
Okay. And Barbara, you're running for which position, and geographically covers the whole state, I know, but go ahead and tell them.
Thank you, Senator, for having me today. I'm running for the Arkansas Supreme Court. It's a statewide race, so anyone that's a resident, a citizen of the state of Arkansas who's registered to vote can vote in my election. And it's position 4. It's an associate justice position, but it's one of 7 judges on the Arkansas Supreme Court.
All right, very good. If you're watching Facebook Live, I'm sorry for the distraction, but we're trying to get situated because we didn't take a break at the bottom of the hour. And also, we are going from icicles to the equivalent of heat in hell in here, and I'm trying to get the thermostat balanced right, okay? So sorry for the freak show there. All right, share anything, first of all, and ladies first. Let's start with Barbara. Share anything that you'd like to share regarding your personal life and family structure.
All right. Well, I grew up in Southwest Little Rock. I have 4 sisters. My mom and dad were very strong churchgoers. We were raised with a strong belief in God and a belief in Jesus Christ as our Savior. They were also big believers in education, and all 5 girls were able, somehow, I don't know how they afforded it, but we were all able to pursue our dreams and go to college and become successful women. We also, I have family in all parts of Arkansas, or not all parts, but in other parts of Arkansas. But I like to tell people that I treasure my freedoms and liberties because my dad fought in World War II and in Korea, in the Army and the Navy. But I have 2 uncles who both fought in World War II. One was actually captured on Corregidor and served, was in a Japanese prisoner of war. And then his brother went to find him and went to the European theater and was shot down over Germany and actually survived that crash, but lost a leg. But he came home. Both of them came home alive, married their sweethearts, and raised children. And those are my cousins today. And those gentlemen taught me the importance of freedom and those who have sacrificed so that I can be here today running for public office.
Sweet. Shawn?
Yeah, thank you so much. I was raised in the Catholic Church and went to Catholic schools in Fort Smith originally and moved from there in 1994 and went off to Hendrix College. And then after that, went into law school. And ultimately, I went and clerked for a federal judge there in Fort Smith. But aside from that, I have 4 brothers and sisters who I adore and 8 nieces and nephews who I also adore and have a lot of fun with. My grandfather is still living. He's 102 years old.
I remember seeing that.
You saw that. Mm-hmm. He was in the Battle of the Bulge, and we're very proud of him and the stories that he continues to tell us about the ways that our country developed and the things that he experienced, which are remarkable. very proud of him. He's still living in Fort Smith.
Very good. So, Shawn, what about what qualifications do you hold that have prepared you or would prepare you to be a judge if elected, and specifically any previous experience that would qualify you as a judge?
You know, I have served as a public servant for nearly 20 years, and for the past 12 years, I've been at the Arkansas Attorney General's office. And even prior to that, I clerked for a United States federal judge. You know, these federal judges, they rule on a lot of important cases that we as clerks, and sometimes even the judge, don't have a lot of knowledge in those areas. But they rely on the ability to research the law and understand what's happening there in order to create justice, in order to carry out justice as is required under the Constitution. And then from there, like I said, after clerking for that judge and helping him come up with those decisions in employment law and maritime law and all sorts of different areas of law, at the Arkansas Attorney General's office, I've represented defendants and plaintiffs. I was in the civil department in that office, representing the boards and agencies of the state for 5 to 6 years. And then I have been in the Consumer Protection Division for the past 7 years, where I have served as a plaintiff's lawyer for harmed consumers around the state. So I'm qualified because I have represented plaintiffs and defendants. I've clerked for a federal judge. I'm a great writer. At least I've worked very hard on my writing talents. And I think that's what we need in a judge, is somebody who can carry out those areas very well in an even and fair way.
All right, Barbara Webb, what qualifications do you?
Right. But before I answer that question, I don't think I mentioned that I'm married. I don't want to get in trouble with my husband.
Well, he was on the other side of the glass looking at you like, what are you doing?
Okay.
So who is your husband?
My husband is Doyle Webb.
Okay.
And we've been married 33 years. We actually met in law school. I also have to mention my 2 dogs,
Okay.
Liberty and Justice.
Are they listening?
They're listening.
Okay, good. I got 2
very
listeners anyway, Shawn.
They're very loyal listeners. But no, I'll now move to my qualifications,
All right.
which I think is what's important in this race. I've been an attorney since 1982. I graduated law school, as I mentioned. And since that time, I have been in private practice. I've been elected 3 times as the prosecuting attorney in the 7th and 22nd judicial districts. And I've served as a judge at all levels of the courts in this state, including being appointed by Governor Mike Huckabee to serve as a special justice on the Arkansas Supreme Court in a death penalty case. I've tried hundreds of cases, jury trials, non-jury trials, and I like, and that's in courtrooms across the state. I'm not limited to have been just a judge in Pulaski County. I have served, and I have been a judge in courtrooms all over the state. Both as a circuit judge and first woman circuit judge in Saline County, appointed by our current governor, and then also as an administrative law judge under 3 different governors, both Democrat and Republican, to hear cases for those what I like to say, the real men and women who get up every day, roll up their sleeves, and go to work, and for reasons unknown to them or unexpected by them, they get hurt on the job that day. And they need medical treatment, and they need money to put food on their table for their family, and they come to the workers' comp system for that type of relief. And those are the type of cases that I've heard over the last 12 years. When I was circuit judge, I served on a circuit bench where I heard 30% criminal cases and 70% domestic cases, which again were cases that affected families. And so I believe I have that real life experience and been in the courtrooms, so that when I'm on the bench at the Supreme Court and I'm reviewing what the judges are hearing, the circuit judges are hearing, what they've had happen in their courtrooms, when I'm reading those transcripts, I'm reading those briefs from those attorneys, I can understand what the case is about. I can understand, I can apply the proper law. I can weigh the evidence according to the proper standards and reach a fair and impartial result.
Okay. So let me ask you this, Barbara, regarding your views on the separation of powers between 3 branches of government. How do you feel or view the balance between the 3 exists? Because as a lawmaker, sometimes we don't feel that you judges get it right. And probably as a judge, sometimes you think you lawmakers don't get it right. And then you got the administrative branch in there that, has their agenda that they want to push too. So just briefly give me an idea or insight as far as your views on how the separation and the balance of power should work.
All right. Well, I'm a strong believer in our Constitution. I believe the Constitution protects those God-given rights that we have. And I believe that I'll compare myself to Gorsuch or Scalia in the way I would interpret the Constitution or apply the Constitution based on an originalist theory. But more importantly, I was given a copy of the Constitution by our late Lieutenant Governor Win Rockefeller, and he called it the owner's manual. And that Constitution does contain those rights that I talked about. But more importantly, I think it tells judges that we need to drive in our own lane, that we should not legislate from the bench. That is not the role of the courts. We have duly elected legislators, much like yourself, Senator, you're part of the balance of separation of powers. And I think the courts should not try to step over or step into the role of the legislature. Likewise, we're not the executive branch, and we're not the one to enforce the laws. That's left to the executive branch.
Shawn?
I'll just briefly say, as a circuit court candidate, I would be bound by precedent as a circuit court judge. And so I don't really have necessarily a position that would change anything from the interpretation of the laws that have been put in place by the Supreme Court over time of the state of Arkansas to explain our separation of powers doctrines. Something that's interesting to me, though, is that across the South, in terms of the executive, the South has had a history of Southern legislative strength instead of having strength in the executive. That's been an interesting perspective for me on separation of powers. But there are a lot of doctrines, like the non-delegation doctrine and such, that deal with the ways that separation of powers is enforced, that I would have to follow and be a part of those precedents because I'm bound by them as a circuit court judge.
All right. On the show, on the Kim Hammer Show today, we've got Shawn Johnson, who's running for circuit judge, the 14th Division, which encompasses Pulaski County and Perry County primarily. And then we have Barbara Webb, who is running for the Associate Justice of the Arkansas Supreme Court, answering questions today. Quick shout out to my sponsors, Baxley, Penfield, Mowdy Realtors down in Saline County, Everett GMC Buick there in Saline County, also Edwards Food Store throughout all Central Arkansas, and Duck's Garage down in Benton on Air Lane Drive. Appreciate all those individuals, all those businesses that help make this show possible. Housekeeping rule, as I always tell you from week to week, the views expressed on this show are mine and mine alone and that of my guest. And so please direct any comments you have regarding the content of the show to me, and you can send that to the Kim Hammer Show or kimhammershow@gmail.com, kimhammershow@gmail.com. And if you're interested in sponsoring the show, you can send me an email and I will get with you. All right, so let's go back to you, Barbara Webb. Judges are to be nonpartisan, yet sometimes it appears that some judges insert their personal views into the rulings. At least that's the rumor and the perspective that is sometimes given. What are your thoughts as far as how you as a judge would not insert your personal views or nonpartisan position into the rulings?
I like to say that my mom used to tell me that the proof is in the pudding, and I believe that my record over the last in excess of 12 years as a judge, in all the positions I've held, including alderman. I've been on alderman, which is a nonpartisan position. I've been, as I mentioned, an administrative law judge. I've been an elected prosecutor where I served all the people of the judicial districts. And in all those times, whether I was elected or appointed to those positions, I've served in a nonpartisan, fair, and impartial way.
Shawn?
Yes, Senator, at the conclusion of every jury trial that I've handled, there's a moment when the judge instructs the jury and says that we know that you come here with your own life experiences and you bring those to bear when deciding the case. Well, that's what a judge does too. We all have life experiences that we grow up in, and we understand the world through a different worldview. But as far as partisanship, that's never a part of the concern. Growing up a certain way or understanding the world in a certain way is one thing, but we don't employ partisanship.
Okay. And so, Shawn, it's a constant battle regarding overcrowding of the jails, and that's a debate that goes back and forth all the time in the legislative session and, in the committee meetings with the administrative branch. Some have thought or sought to address this by utilizing more community services instead of sentencing, or are seeking some latitude, if you would, in sentencing in order to keep from filling the jailhouse up. What are your thoughts on this matter?
I'm generally in favor of that, and I certainly can't take a position on the legality of it or the legal issues that might be involved, but there are certainly ways that we can utilize alternative sentencing in order to make sure that the what we're doing as judges is fitting to what the issue or the violation that the person caused is. So I think that alternative sentencing in some manner is just fine.
Okay. And Barbara, you may not have as much of a input on this particular issue, but share your thoughts.
Sure. Well, I do tell people, I think the one thing that distinguishes me from my opponent in this race is that I'm the only candidate who stood up and cleaned up behind corruption in our court system. And that's when I was elected. That was when I was elected prosecuting attorney, and I came in behind Darren Harmon. And we had a problem in Saline County.
We had a big problem in Saline County back then.
And we had a crowded jail. And when we started shutting down, I think we shut down over 500 meth labs the first year I took office, and we started prosecuting people again because we found a backlog of 4,000 cases. That we felt the problems of not having enough jail space. Our juries were sending strong messages to drug dealers and drug manufacturers that they were no longer welcome in our county, and they were giving tough sentences to all those criminals that had kind of escaped the system for so many years. And so we had to look for alternative options and sentences just to make sure that the people that were caught and prosecuted and convicted did have served some time. And now, there were times when we would look at other ways, like with the juvenile, we might look at some type of GED program, some type of rehabilitation program to give them a second chance. Obviously, the hardcore guys we had to send to prison, but we also looked at other type of alternative punishment. I know Governor Huckabee was real big in alternative sentencing.
I'm going to do a show sometime once we get past this, probably up in April or May, but the subject, I'm going to bring in people that are experts to speak on it, but the subject of the show is going to be how much is a pound of flesh worth? Because that's what people always want whenever a crime is committed. And I think it would be a good dialogue to have among those that are involved in the process as to determine, because we don't want, I'm editorializing here, y'all are not partisan, so you can keep your thoughts. But anyway, I think that the one thing that people want is that they want people who commit the serious crimes to be committed to the serious time. And so it is an ongoing debate. And the reality is, do you want to go out and build a $100 million jail? And how many $100 million jails do you want to build in order to keep locking those people up? But at the same time, we don't want to go soft on crime because that would make your job as a judge hard, prosecutor hard, public defender job, hard. So just a public service announcement, that is going to be the contents of one of the shows coming up in the future. All right.
Senator,
go ahead.
I was just going to mention, as a circuit judge, I had the experience of working with several of our specialty courts, and I think our Supreme Court is looking at going that direction, which I think also is an alternate way to deal with the overcrowding. We have a Hope Court in Saline County, and Judge Arnold. That's been a very successful program of keeping people out of prison, but yet making sure that they are walking the straight and narrow when they're out. It's also been we also have a drug court. Those courts sometimes are not as effective as the Hope Court, but the Hope Court has been doing well. I know there's some mental health courts that are being opened up in the state, and to address specific issues where it's a mental health issue that may be causing that person, and they're not getting the proper treatment, or they get on, they self-medicate, and then they wind up committing crimes. And so the mental health court, which requires specialty people to help find the answers for those folks. So I see that as another option, and as a Supreme Court justice, I would support the further development of specialty courts.
All right. So let me come to you now, Shawn, and also the Veterans Court, because I had the retired judge from the, I think it was the first Veterans Court in the state of Arkansas. I'm drawing a blank on her name. Y'all can help me. But anyway, had her in, and actually Ben, he said it on the air, but he was a byproduct of that. Very successful now, applying for law school, actually. So those specialty courts serve a valuable purpose. Shawn, let me ask you this. Some judges have a hesitation regarding the legislators' involvement in the judicial process when it comes to sitting in the courtroom on certain cases. What are your views as far as either the general public or the legislators' accessibility to the courtroom when cases are being heard?
Sure, and I'm not concerned about that at all. I think that legislators, like any other citizen or member of the public, should have access to the court and be able to come in and see. But as you know, I've also defended Act 900 of 2015 for the past 5 years, which is a law designed to protect our community pharmacies. And in that law, and in that case, there was some question about the meaning of the law. And there are certain circumstances where it's helpful to have the legislators as members and of the team that are defending that law and being a part of that team in court. And so I don't see a problem with that at all, so long as it conforms to the precedents of the courts.
Barbara?
I think that openness is transparency, and I think transparency brings accountability. And so I know one thing that our court currently does, and I applaud them for that, is they do an appeal on wheels program where they don't just stay in Little Rock. They take their oral arguments, if you will, to courtrooms around the state of Arkansas. In fact, I think they're one of the only states that recently took their oral argument to Texarkana, and both the Texas Supreme Court and the Arkansas Supreme Court held their oral arguments on the same day. And the high school students in that area and the adults and legislators could all come and be a part of that process. So I think, again, that anything we can do to keep our court system accountable to the people is the way we should go.
There's and you kind of hit on this a minute ago, but there's an ongoing debate regarding the balance of mental health support services and crimes committed when the possibility of mental health issues are what was attributed to why the crime was committed by the individual. I also know that the state hospital over here struggles with space because some judges are just wanting to send them straight to the state hospital and bypass the community services that are involved, which creates a backlog. I mean, everything has a cause and effect to it. So just share for a minute each what your views are as far as mental health services, how it plays in the conviction of the individual, but also as alternate possibilities when it comes to sentencing, yay or nay. Barbara?
Well, again, as Mr. Johnson just noted, we can't speak to specific cases that might come before our courts. But I think in general, I can talk from my experience on the bench. And I do think that...
Yeah, don't say anything that's going to get any three of us in trouble with ethics or anything. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
I do think that that the mental health cases do present a unique situation. I mean, coming from Saline County, we used to have, on the average, 100 mental commitments a month, which is dramatically higher than most other counties other than Pulaski County. And as a prosecutor, that was our obligation to take those cases through the mental health commitment process in addition to the criminal cases that we were handling. And so we were handling those cases, and it's a very difficult time for family members they want their loved one to get help. They're also probably the most at risk from something that loved one can do when they're homicidal or suicidal. So again, I think it's important that we do look for those resources, and we can't just either lock them up in prison or send them to the state hospital. Again, I think you've got to find the right way to give them the support they need, and sometimes it's as much as making sure they're living with the right person that's going to care for them, and that they're going to make sure they get their medications when they need it, and it's not someone who drives them into a situation where they do things that they don't understand what they're doing. So I would support the it's a difficult situation, and I know it's one of our biggest obstacles, I think, challenges to face. But like, as a Supreme Court, we would oversee the circuit courts and try to help provide resources and support for the circuit courts that are handling those cases in a specialty court.
Shawn Johnson?
You know, in society today, our understanding of the needs of every individual and the challenges that they face, whether it be mental health or addiction to various substances, opioids, every other kind of drug that might be an illicit drug. These are things that we are facing in our society, and slowly it's becoming more and more aware for all of us that some face those challenges. And I think the courts have to evolve as well. And we have to find ways to help people through those problems for the betterment of society. So I think that alternative sentencing in ways that are tailored to those problems and that help people through them, those are great solutions that are solutions-based processes. Those are important.
Okay. So what do you possess personally? Start with you, Shawn, and we're coming down to 5 minutes in the show, so let's try to keep it around 30, 45 seconds. What do you possess personally that will equip you to deal with the responsibilities entrusted you to be a judge and to not affect your day-to-day activities outside the courtroom? And by that, what I mean is I have great admiration for judges. Wish I could say I respected all of them, but like legislators, we're not all respected either. But the reality is judges have an enormous responsibility and carry a great weight. And it's not like you can just turn the light switch off when you walk out of the courtroom. So what do you possess personally that'll help you maintain a long distance relation or long running relationship as a judge?
My friends and colleagues in community groups and church groups will tell you, and they tell me this, they observe it, that I have this ability to listen to all sides of any discussion, any argument without drawing conclusions or making statements about which side I might agree with or not. And I wait to hear it all. And I'll even question the side that I may agree with or question the side I don't agree with. And I'm always fair and balanced in that. And I've been complimented on it by my friends. It's something that's buried deep inside me, and I'm ready to do that as a judge.
Barbara Webb?
Thank you. I like to tell people that, being married to a lawyer, you learn real fast that you don't bring your work home with you because we couldn't have survived 33 years of marriage if we both had brought our work home with us. So we don't. We don't talk about our work. We don't share that. We keep that in our professional life separate. But I do think that the other thing that I do and that I think is important for a judge on the Supreme Court to have had this experience is I stay active in my community. I stay active in my church. I have friends. I try to have a well-balanced life. I've been active in several community efforts, Safe Haven Shelter, our community theater. I've been legal counsel for Boy Scouts. And then I've served at my church as a deacon and an elder and actually moderator of the Arkansas Presbytery. So I think I like to say that there's a verse scripture in Micah 6:8 that the Rockefeller family has considered special to them, and I hope it defines me on the Supreme Court. What does the Lord require of thee but to seek justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with our God?
I think about Moses and Jethro. When Jethro, his father-in-law, came up to him, and in my opinion, the judicial system was formed in that experience that we model ours after. And Jethro told his son-in-law, "You're doing too much. Share the load a little bit." All right, we've got about 3 minutes, so I'm going to give you each 45 seconds, and this may be our last question. What are your thoughts of all people being equal before the law, and what do you possess as an individual that would assure the public that indeed all people are equal before the law when they come into your courtroom? Barbara Webb?
I use the analogy of Lady Liberty, who wears a blindfold, and I think that's important because justice should be blind to differences in people, whether it's the color of their skin, the amount of money they have, who they know. All of that has to be put aside, and justice has to be fair and impartial. And that's how I would respond to that. And I think as a woman who started practicing law in 1982, when women weren't in the courtrooms, and there are very few women judges, I fought those fights to make sure that women, young women, and myself had the opportunities, and therefore I would never want a system that was somehow would eliminate women or minorities from our court system.
Shawn Johnson?
I believe in equality in all senses, and I think that one of the things that demonstrates that ability on my part is my work at the Arkansas Attorney General's office, where I have worked for 12 years. I have worked for 2 attorneys general of both major political parties, and so I do the work regardless of ideology or favor, and that will go just the same in the courtroom for me.
Very good. We're down to 1 minute, so let me just say this. You've been listening to the Kim Hammer Show today. My guest this half hour, Shawn Johnson, Circuit Judge for 14th Division, a candidate, and Barbara Webb, who is running for the Associate Justice of the Arkansas Supreme Court. So I want to encourage you, get out and vote. The polls are open today, early voting till 4 o'clock. Monday, they're going to be open from 8 to 6, and Tuesday, big day for Arkansas and for the nation. The polls will be open Tuesday, so you've got that opportunity. Get out today and exercise your right to vote on an absolutely beautiful Saturday. Just a couple reminders of those who helped make this show possible. Baxley Penfield Mouty down in Saline County, Everett GMC, also down in Saline County, Edwards Food Store throughout central Arkansas, and then Duck's Garage down in Benton on Air Lane Drive. And if you want to help sponsor the show, just send me an email to kimhammershow@gmail.com, and I'll be glad to get information out to you. Next week, we're going to have Terry Parrish, who is the president of the American Baptist Association. We're going to have a good debate about separation of church and state, and so I hope that you'll come back next week. Again, thank you, Shawn Johnson, and thank you, Barbara Webb, for being on the Kim Hammer Show. And above all, thank you, listeners, for tuning in today. Have a great day.
101.1 FM. The Answer. KDXE FM. Kamak Village, Little Rock. A Salem Media Group station. 101.1 FM. The Answer.